We're trying to be inside so we can get back to you, to the reporting as best as we can what's happening in that courtroom and outside that courtroom. I'm here with Gene Rossi. I'm here also with Dina Dahl, Catherine Lizardo. Question we have from Christina W. on YouTube: is the jury decision going to be live too? That is our plan, to bring it to you live. Whether or not Johnny Depp or Amber Heard will actually be in that courtroom is an entirely separate issue. They don't have to be there. All right, so Dina, I'm going to go to you. We have a question from YouTube, from one of our YouTubers, Look Alive Sunshine. Is it common for a lawyer to not believe their own client? In this case, if Amber's own lawyers didn't believe her, would they still be on the case or ignore their thoughts to do their job?
Okay, that's a great question. And, I mean, we have public defenders who are assigned cases all the time, regardless of whether or not they believe their client. So lawyers definitely can take a case, even if they don't believe their client. What they're not allowed to do is put that client on the stand and allow them to testify if they know that what they're going to be testifying to is a lie. But otherwise, you know, in terms of private practice, a lawyer may not take a case if they don't believe the case, just because they don't think they can win it. And as a lawyer in private practice, you want to be able to win your cases. I mean, certainly you can still take a case even if you don't believe them, if you think you can do a good legal job and win. But for the most part, I would say lawyers usually take cases and only when they believe their clients, just because if they can pick and choose, they would rather take a case they believe in.
And a case that they think they could win as well. We're getting a lot of procedural questions, Gene.
Yes,
a ton of them.
yes.
People are very interested in the process. So from Kimberly Belver on YouTube, from a juror's perspective, how is a ruling of stricken different than an objection sustained, you know, by the judge? How should the jurors treat these differently? Thank you.
That's a fantastic question. An objection sustained means I ask a question, how many times did you rob a bank? Objection sustained, that means that question is gone. When something is stricken, it's a witness says something or an attorney says something that is so prejudicial that those sentences have to be stricken from the transcript. They're almost the same. They're like fraternal twins. They accomplish the same thing, but they're just a little bit different.
Yeah, and you know they're going to get an instruction that not to take that into consider. Obviously the evidence that comes in, they're supposed to, but they're not to take anything away from the stricken, not to use it against the party. All right, so I have a question for Catherine Lizardo. This is from James Moriarty on YouTube. By the way, isn't that like a Sherlock Holmes villain? Yeah. Anyway, James Moriarty. To Catherine Lizardo. Can the jury really take all the text allegedly by Johnny Depp as a reliable evidence? I mean, in the closing arguments, that's all Rottenborn talked about mostly.
They can, and it is evidence. We saw certain texts that were admitted into evidence, so they have to take that into consideration. Now, whether or not they will solely rely on that, of course they won't, because there's a lot of evidence here. There's video testimony, deposition testimony, text messages. Those are documents that you can rely as evidence. Now, Rottenborn actually used those text messages a lot because it's more visual and we see it. But I have to point out, he used the same text message that was at issue yesterday, where Johnny Depp said that he didn't write that. But yeah, I believe Anjanette also discussed that yesterday, that it doesn't seem like that's something that came from Johnny Depp, that it was actually a third person in that text thread. So that was interesting.
Yeah, Dina, this is a question that we've gotten a lot this past week as we're coming to the conclusion of the case. This is from Amanda Canning on YouTube. Can either of them appeal after the verdict?
Absolutely, and they most likely will. You know, if they lose the case and end up having to owe the person money, they can appeal the verdict. And we know that a lot of the objections, especially, I don't know if you noticed, but the jury instructions yesterday, one of the objections that Depp's attorney really wanted to make is, I believe they wanted the instruction to say that the statement had to be false or that its implication had to be false, which is very important. If he loses that case, it could be on that point. And she said, yes, don't worry, we have that on the record. The reason why he wanted it on the record is that would be a strong issue on appeal. So definitely if somebody loses, they will most likely appeal.
Great question, important question. All right, Gene, I know we're signing you off very soon, so I want to get one more to you from Twitch. Opalaria wasn't saying the jury's decision has an effect on the First Amendment misleading and possibly scaring the jury into siding with Amber. The First Amendment isn't relevant to defamation or suits between individuals, only the government. You have about a minute.
I respectfully disagree. This case is in part on the First Amendment. I think Mr. Rottenborn did a very good job that under Virginia law, if you are exercising your First Amendment right about a public policy issue and you don't have actual malice, you have immunity from any lawsuit. So in part, I respectfully disagree.
All right, well, here's what we're going to do. So, Gene, I know we have to sign you off. We can't thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Beautiful.
But we're bringing in Anjanette Levy, who is in the courtroom today. So if you have any questions about what that atmosphere looked like, maybe what the jurors' reactions are, throw those questions in. We're still going to do the live Q&A session. Catherine Lizardo, Dina Dahl are going to stay with me. We're going to remain in this parking garage where we can stay safe. Stay with us here on Law and Crime. We'll take a very quick break, and we'll get to more of your questions on the other side. We'll be right back right after this.